Iran's parliament has backed closing the Strait of Hormuz. It's a vital shipping lane for oil and gas. The experts say the move might backfire on Iran. Let's take a look.
The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf with the Indian Ocean, bordered by Iran to the north and the United Arab Emirates and Oman to the south. According to the International Energy Agency, the strait is the exit route from the Gulf for around 25% of the world's oil supply, including from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Qatar, Iraq, and Iran, and most of the world's spare production capacity. As one of the world's busiest oil transit choke points, it sees over 20 million barrels of crude daily, along with 1/5 of liquefied natural gas trade. While at its narrowest point, the Strait of Hormuz squeezes to just 38.9 kilometers, a strategic bottleneck where Iran's coastal defenses, including anti-ship missiles and fast attack craft, could pose swift control. Iran has repeatedly threatened to close the key Strait of Hormuz if attacked. Closure of the strait, even for a limited period, would have a major impact on global oil and gas markets. Any blockade could trigger severe supply disruptions, spiking oil prices, raising shipping risks, and straining import-reliant economies. Although alternative routes exist, such as Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline and the United Arab Emirates Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline, their combined capacity falls far short of Hormuz's critical flow.
Joining us now to delve more into the nuances around the conflict is Harold Skip York. He's a non-resident fellow at the Global Oil and Energy Center for Energy Studies. That's a part of the Baker Institute at Rice University. Skip, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me this evening.
Well, first I want to get your reaction to this latest news about a ceasefire between Iran and Israel that Donald Trump is speaking about, and what that would mean to global markets.
Well, I think in the last couple of hours, it looks like we may have taken both sides may have taken a step back. And if you look just in the last few hours, since Iran launched their ballistic missiles towards Qatar and those missiles were shot down, oil prices have retrenched all the way back to where they were just before Israel started their missile attacks back 12 days ago. So, we had a modest price increase throughout the length of this the first 12 days of the conflict. That was probably a sign that the market thought the probability of a major disruption in the Gulf the probability was small, or that the duration would be fairly short. And the market is now signaling that it thinks that the risk of such a disruption has now been sufficiently unwound that it's taken prices back to where it was before the conflict initiated.
And look, I mean, the news has been changing by the minute, it seems. We know that Iran's parliament approved the closure of the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend. So these developments keep changing very quickly. Do you think Iran would actually go through with that?
No, I don't think they would. I think all the principals involved understand just how dramatic a step that would be, and really, it's a no-win situation for any country involved. The Iranians would lose, what little support they have in the world. One of their biggest benefactors is China, which would be one of the countries most negatively impacted by shutting down the straits, both from a crude oil perspective and from an LNG, the natural gas imports that they bring in from the Middle East as well. And I think the Iranians would understand that very well. So I think what might have actually happened was the combination of the parliament voting to close the Strait of Hormuz, with the Supreme Council having the authority then to make the final decision, combined with the relatively mild missile attack that happened earlier today. What that did, the combination of those two sort of allowed the Supreme Council to sort of take a position where they've taken a response to the bombing attack that the U.S. made on Saturday, but now they can position themselves for the on-ramp. And now we've seen the announcement from President Trump that a ceasefire has been agreed to between Israel and Iran. It may have been that resolution by the parliament may have been part of the posturing that Iran was looking for a diplomatic off-ramp to resolve the situation diplomatically rather than to continuing a conflict.
You mentioned oil prices earlier today on Monday. Global oil prices slid despite the conflict and this sort of back and forth that we watch happen. And then we also had Donald Trump's call to keep prices low. What is your take on all of that?
Yeah, I think Donald Trump kind of understood I think the president understood, as all the actors do, is that, that high oil prices just aren't good for the global economy. We actually have prior to this conflict, we had sort of a soft global oil demand world with global demand was growing, but it was growing rather sluggishly. We had a world economy that was kind of moving a bit sideways because of the uncertainty around tariffs and for some other reasons as well. And low oil prices is one of the insurance policies that the global economy can have to kind of keep the global economy moving. I think he's signaling, let's de-escalate the conflict in the Middle East, and those low oil prices not only help de-escalate the conflict, but it also kind of de-risks the global economy, the macroeconomy as a whole. And I think that's what he was trying to signal throughout a number of those social media postings that he was posting throughout the day.
What are some of the other financial implications when it comes to the oil shipping companies in the region as they've watched all of this as well?
Yeah, I think we've sort of seen shipping rates start to escalate, insurance rates starting to escalate. I think that was just sort of the natural pricing in of risk. And I think what we'll see now is we'll see some of those financial risks start to unwind themselves, just like the price has unwound today. I imagine we'll see shipping rates and insurance rates start to unwind themselves as well. As the world is going to watch, right, because we've had the announcement of a ceasefire, the next thing is, does that ceasefire hold? And what happens after the ceasefire holds? Do we actually start to return back to negotiations? But I do think we're going to start to see all of those, the oil price, insurance, shipping rates, I think everything starts to unwind a bit as we've taken a step back from the edge. Does diplomacy take hold? And if that diplomacy holds, then I think all the markets start to return back to their fundamentals, and we start to squeeze that risk premium out of the markets.
Skip York, thanks for being with us, non-resident fellow at the Global Oil and Energy Center at Rice University. We appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.